Sometimes bad graphics can be the thing that pushes you away from a video game, but these are going to be some examples of why you should not judge a book by its cover. Welcome to Chaos Gaming. Today we're going to be checking out some excellent games that they didn't really look that good. Now, to be clear, you're not going to see games like Minecraft or Undertale on here. Those games don't have bad graphics, they just have a unique art style. I'm talking about the games with amazing gameplay, but the graphics were kind of and they probably aged even more So drop a like, let me know what game you think is going to make it on here, and we're going to start off with an arrow to the knee, or Skyrim. Now, Skyrim does have some very nice environments and cool character models. The game, well, it was criticized even back in 2011 for its extremely clunky character animation, the abundance of glitches also. When you look at Skyrim next to other games from 2011, the graphics weren't really exactly up to par. Throughout the years, new versions of the game have patched things up and made them more visually appealing, but when you look at the original version of Skyrim, it's rough. However, that doesn't change the fact that the game itself is fantastic. I mean, Skyrim keeps getting re-released all these years later because people enjoy it, and a lot of people are still playing it for the first time. So yes, the 2011 version of Skyrim isn't exactly pretty, but that's not what necessarily matters in an RPG. It's the immersion factor, and Skyrim will certainly immerse you for hours and hours. Next up, make sure you guys have those notifications fully turned on, follow the page, hit that like button. PUBG. You probably expected this one. It was released in early access in 2016, and it grew almost entirely through word of mouth. It was largely popularized as the Battle Royale genre loved it, and it helped solidify the framework for the modern BR game. Now, when PUBG was first released, it was chopped on for its visuals. The whole thing was put together by a handful of people and then updated throughout the coming years. Even today, PUBG isn't exactly a pretty game to look at, but that doesn't change the fact that it's one of the biggest multiplayer games in the world. It's been a top 5 game on Steam for 3 years running, and that's probably not going to stop anytime soon. Next up, Friday the 13th, the game. Released in mid-2017, it was ripped apart. I mean, it really was. It had dated graphics, very choppy animations, but at the same time, it was fun. Friday the 13th was one of the best asymmetrical multiplayer games on the market at the time, and it had a ton of great fan service for fans of this horror franchise. You either played as one of the camp counselors trying to escape Camp Crystal Lake, or you played as Jason Voorhees himself. You hunted them down, and you dispersed of them. It had an underwhelming launch due to the poor visuals and the lack of content, but just about anybody who has played it, myself included, will tell you it was a ton of fun. Now, unfortunately, the servers were shut down a few months ago, but I'm willing to bet there will probably be a pretty big revival in the next year or so. They put a lot of love into this project, and it has a decent following, so there's no way they just walk away from all the potential. Now let's hop over to the Marvel universe. The Punisher. Specifically, 2004 Punisher. One of the most controversial games of its time. The Punisher was a third-person action game released alongside the first Punisher movie, which wasn't very good, and the devs really wanted this game to follow the comics, which obviously resulted in extreme violence and some pretty gruesome torture sequences. Now, originally, the Punisher was going to be given the dreaded AO rating, which forced the devs to go back and make edits in order to bring it down to a mature rating because it was a movie tie-in game. It was rushed, and it didn't turn out very good. I mean, there was a lot of corners cut. The character models, very clunky. A lot of sound effects didn't properly line up with the visuals, but hey, you know what? The game was actually fun, especially if you're a fan of that character. There's a ton of fan service. The gameplay's pretty solid, and I would say it's one of the better movie tie-in games of the PS2 era, and that is saying something. So if you have a PS2 just laying around or an emulator, give it a try. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite franchises of all time. Legend of Zelda, specifically the Twilight Princess. It is mostly remembered for its more mature tone and its realistic art style. Most Zelda games are stylized, but Twilight Princess tried to make things more grounded, more real, a little more dark. But this was largely held back by the fact it was developed for the Wii. I think everybody will agree the Wii wasn't exactly best suited for realistic graphics. It was incredibly underpowered compared to the 360 and the PS3, which is why most Wii games have very cartoony graphics. Now, Twilight Princess is an amazing game, and I think it's one of the most underappreciated Zelda titles out there, but if you're going to go play it for the first time, make sure you play the HD remaster. The Wii version of Twilight Princess is very murky, and the atmosphere is cool, but the visuals, they're hit or miss due to the technical limitations of that platform. Now we've reached number 5. Such a cool name. Earth Defense Force, EDF. This whole franchise belongs on a list like this. Now, Earth Defense Force is a long-running third-person shooter franchise, and just about every game in the series looks horrible. So far, there have been 6 main entries and 4 spin-offs. That's right, 10 games, and every game has the same premise. You're a soldier trying to defend Earth from giant bugs. It's super campy, super dumb, and a lot of fun. Almost every game in the series was developed on a rather low budget, and it shows. However, the devs used that to their advantage, as the crappy graphics and animations contribute to the super campy tone of the series, and every installment is actually pretty fun. They're not going to blow you away or anything, but it is fun to play if you just want something random. Now let's talk about one of the biggest games of all time, CSGO. Released in 2012, this version has remained one of the biggest games in the world. I mean, many reasons. Tight gameplay, abundance of combat, humongous esports scene, but you know why else the game has such a big player base? It's easy to run. When developing CSGO, Valve wanted to make sure it wasn't too demanding to run, which resulted in a very simple art style and character animation. Now, it's not eye candy, but the gameplay is some of the best you can get from a PC shooter, and due to it being available for so long, there's a ton of content. And did I mention, it's free to play. A game that doesn't have to be eye candy. It doesn't have to. It really doesn't to be popular. It's been dominating esports scenes for over 8 years now, and it can pretty much be ran on any computer in the world. At number 3 today, Crackdown. The franchise, well, it's taken a nosedive since the 360 days, but that doesn't change the fact that the original Crackdown game was excellent. It was released 14 years ago, and it's one of the most fun open-world games ever. You played as a super-powered agent trying to fight various crime syndicates in a dystopian city. It's awesome. It was all about the fun factor. You could throw cars. You could leap over buildings. You could use awesome sci-fi weaponry. Now, compared to other open-world games at that time, Crackdown looked significantly worse, especially in the animation department. But when you put it next to other open-world games, I mean, like Fallout 3, GTA 4, and Oblivion, we know corners were cut, but it doesn't matter. It was fun. It was arguably way more fun than those other open world games at that time. Now let's go way back. Final Fantasy VII, the original. I know, this is one of the best RPGs of all time, but even by 1997 standards, you can't say it looked good. The character models were bizarre to say the least. The animation was stiff, and I think it actually looked worse than Final Fantasy VI due to Square Enix wanting to experiment with more 3D animation. But, of course, nobody talks about how bad the game looked because everything else was top-notch. Final Fantasy VII had one of the best stories in gaming as well as an extremely engaging gameplay loop and a ton of content. Now, I may get some heat for putting a game as beloved as Final Fantasy VII on this list, but I mean, we need to be honest here. The game looked like crap, but it was a classic. And you know one that looked horrible, but it doesn't matter? At number 1 today, RuneScape. You can't argue. You're not going to look me in the face and tell me this game looks good, but you're also not going to argue the fact that it didn't stop a single person from adoring it. Back in 2001, man, it's been a long time, RuneScape came out, an MMORPG designed to be run on web browsers, meaning all the visuals had to be simple. As anyone will tell you, the need to fit this game onto common browser hardware gave it a very unique look, and throughout the years, even as technology got better, the devs chose to not change the visuals too much in order to maintain that nostalgic vibe. Now, according to the developers, RuneScape has over 200 million registered accounts, making it one of the most successful indie games of all time, and it's deserved. So yes, it looks like hot, steamy garbage, but it's also one of the best MMORPGs of all time, and fans of the game wouldn't change the visuals for anything. They'll say you can keep your updated graphics. And there you have it. Those are some amazing games that looked like crap. You guys let me know one game that deserved to be on this list that didn't make it today, and I'll see you soon.